everyone, and welcome back to the Game Souk. We have a very special guest today, Grace Lind, previously of Epic Games and Blizzard. And also, many people know this who are in the Fortnite community, but I wore my Gracelets. They're called Gracelets, not bracelets. She is very well known for these. And I hate to generate so much FOMO on a Thursday morning, but like one of mine says verse, one says game awards because we went to the game awards together, which was fun. And Snoop's party, I'll mention. One says Angie, one says UGC Dev, one says Fortnite. Anyway, they're a lot of fun. So Grace, thank you so much for joining us today. She's going to give us an exciting rundown on the World Builder Summit, which is on April 23rd. Also, we plan to have Eliza Yapinen live from the Cartoon Next conference in Marseille, France, but she'll have to give us an update on that next week because she had a connection issue this morning. And we're going to talk about the hottest topic right now in UGC, which is age verification and privacy. We have another update on that, and we got more from the Roblox world that James will talk about. We were pretty excited because there was a GameSpeed article yesterday that highlighted our panel at GDC, which was hosted by Dean Takahashi. It came at the end of a series of debates on the hottest topics in gaming. So AI, age verification and child safety, and then UGC, of course. We have written 2 reports on this topic because there's a cacophony of complaint out there about the fact that both gaming platforms like Roblox and social media platforms might be addressing age verification, but they're doing it in a way that is not privacy protecting. And we think that there are solutions out there, like the World Solution. By the way, next Friday, I'll be in San Francisco at the World Day. The World Foundation was co-founded by Sam Altman. Then we will, of course, go to Mike to talk about AI. A lot has happened on that front, and also cybersecurity. So we'll just dive in. Grace, take it away. Tell us a little bit about you, and then tell us about the World Builder Summit.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm previously at Epic Games. I worked on the UEFN team very closely with all of the UGC creators in the space. And now I lead strategic partnerships for one of the UEFN teams called Genesis Studios. But I'm here to talk about World Builder Summit, which is something I am so excited about. It's the first event dedicated to all platforms of UGC, for all creators to come together, to learn, to talk, to connect. We've got some incredible speakers from Roblox, from Epic, Do Big Studios. We have Penny and Sam from Grand Theft Hamlet. There's so many incredible talks that are happening. I found out about this like 4 months ago, and I realized, it's been something that I had been looking for. So I was all in, and I'm really, really just excited to bring people together and show the world what UGC gaming can really be.
Well, tell us also about the format, because what attracted me to the format was just how community oriented it is and how UGC focused it is. I feel like every time I go to one of these conferences, I leave saying, I don't need to go to that conference again next year, because there's just so little UGC and it seems very sporadic. Tell us about the format and how you guys are building this.
Yeah, so it's not pay to play. We are making sure that we're selecting, the right people to be speaking. Like you said, I've gone to every gaming event ever, and there's very little UGC content, and the content that is there is just not what people really want. It's people talking at you, and it's not necessarily the right people. And so we've just gone, really hard to find those people, to get them in the room. It's about 200 people we've sold out now, which is incredible.
Awesome.
But we're looking into ways to have the recordings the talks recorded, and potentially make them available for everyone at a later date.
Awesome. That's really great. Well, feel free to jump in on anything you want to talk about here on the Game Souk because you're an expert in the space. And we're so happy to have you. You can join us any week, Grace. So let's dive in here. Now, is James on? Oh, James is here. Perfect. So let's just talk a little bit about, our favorite topic, age verification, privacy. We've seen, many updates. It feels like countries diving in to join the party here. What happened this week, and what do you think it means specifically in Roblox?
Yeah, hey. So we have seen over the last couple of weeks that the Philippines specifically have been very strict with Roblox. They have essentially said that they were going to ban the platform if they, didn't like meet their demands, basically. Right now, the ban has been postponed, whilst they are having like key safety reforms. And what this includes is age verification required for chat access. Currently, at the moment, you just need to verify with like their AI estimated age verification. And so what they're actually saying now is to just straight up be able to chat to anyone, you would need to upload your ID. Users then would be limited to appropriate age groups. Then the behavior would be tracked, like basically of what they're doing, what they're playing, who they're talking to, and stuff like that. And the biggest thing for the Philippines or the Filipino government has been using the Philippine national ID verification. And so having to share all of the like ID verification with the government with a clear process for reporting cybercrime. So there's obviously like quite a lot to take in there. I think, what does this mean, overall? I think this is probably not just for Roblox, but really the next step of where the internet goes. For a lot of us that have been using the internet all our lives, it's probably been, I don't want to say lawless because there's definitely laws around it, but you can be pretty anonymous if you want to be, which is, has good and bad sides to it, obviously. And I think now this is probably the start of having to ID verify, you being tracked with everything that you do, being watched by sort of everyone. And I think, the overarching opinion is probably if you're not doing anything wrong, that's fine. But do we want all governments in the world having access to all of our data and tracking everything we do? What does that do for freedom of speech? What does that do for, being able to express who you are and all that type of stuff? So yeah, I think it opens up a lot of really interesting conversations. I don't think there's no going back from this. I think it probably only gets stricter, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we also saw Greece dive into the pool this week as well, right? With the, or maybe it was over a week ago now.
Yeah, it was a couple days ago on social media front. I don't know that gaming explicitly is included there, but one should assume so, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of these platforms, what we've really found in digging into this topic is that whether it's a social media platform or a Roblox or a UEFN or really any platform, because these are the social media and gaming kind of meanings are blending, and it feels like the idea that kids should self-verify is not right. We've talked about KWS, the Epic solution. We've talked to our friend Paul Dunn about that. The idea that parents should get more involved, should set these up for their kids. But then it begged the question: wait a second, should we even be giving our PII to a platform? Do we need to be giving our passport, our face scan, our driver's license, all of this information? And we don't believe that we do need to be doing that. And that's what we've been writing about. So I don't know, Xandros, if you want to comment on or give a little bit of a preview of what we're writing about that's coming out this Saturday.
Yeah. So I think, the past two reports that we've done have been like the focus on, well, first we have age verification. It's all the hype is on age verification, and Discord and Roblox do this global rollout. It obviously doesn't go all that well in response to especially discords. So we started looking into it and like, what does this mean? And slowly that turned into, well, age verification is important, and how can we do it with privacy focus lens, and putting that first and then coming in with verification. And we found that this technology, I mean, it already exists, and it's through zero knowledge proofs, and we've talked about it, I mean, almost every week since on this show, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about it. But this weekend's that will come out Saturday, we'll go into, well, for both proof of personhood and age verification, how do we use this technology? What is this technology? And does it really at scale enable online identification without actually needing to identify oneself? Like, can we prove you're the age you say you are? And can we prove you're really a person and not some bot or an AI that's been given the authority to act on behalf of a human, an agent, without having to say, hey, let me see your passport, your credit card, or any of it. And privacy is really important as it gets further, because we get into biometric data that can't be replaced. A credit card can be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
If the data breach happens there, that can be replaced. But if we're talking about my fingerprint, my iris, whatever it might be, that's really hard that's impossible to replace. If that gets breached, it's over. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's out forever.
Yeah, and I think that is why initially when we looked at the world solution of, the iris scan, which by the way, Blade Runner previewed 40 years ago, we thought, ooh, that's kind of creepy. But actually the images stay on your device and you can delete them and control them yourself. It's just an encrypted code that goes out there to answer yes, no questions. So, James is always talking, and James is talking often about, privacy and the importance of it for the individual. And I agree with that. And, it's kind of like when I go into a bar, well, maybe not me, but maybe Miles or Kesha. When you go into a bar, like, do you need to really give everything that's on your driver's license? No. They just want to know yes or no. Are you over 21? They don't need to know all of the other things about you. And so that's what we really like about the zero knowledge proofs. But we're going to dig in more on that, and we'll continue that discussion. But if anybody has anything else to add, I know, James, you usually have some interesting insights on this in terms of privacy.
Yeah, I just think it's we've had very good online privacy for like a long time, and I think obviously that puts me in the camp of I have been a good human on the internet, and there are obviously a lot of people that have used it inappropriately and stuff like that, but there's so many data breaches that happen without my ID, like just in general, that these companies are not great at looking after data, and they're not even small companies. I think it was like 5 years ago, maybe Sony had that breach, on PlayStation, and I think it was something like 60% of their like payment data was like leaked. Roblox, as we're talking about that, they have what feels like an annual data breach. Back at RDC 2024, all the people going to RDC that were invited, which are all the sort of top developers and top creators, all of their emails and names were leaked, and some of these developers are multi-millionaires, and then started having their address and stuff leaked, which is like pretty poor. And so that we can't already expect them to look after that data. So for me, I don't want them being able to store my driver's license and stuff like that. And I know that they say they're not going to store that, but there are so many companies online that say, hey, we're not storing like this data, and it turns out like a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, oh yeah, we did mean to delete that, but we kind of forgot. Our bad, and nothing really happens with it. And so it's like, yeah, I think it's one of those. And the Philippines is the start for sure, but there's more bad actors out there. I sound like such a conspiracy theorist, but like I don't think many governments are unfortunately looking at this from a child safety standpoint. I think they're looking at this from a much wider standpoint of how can we have a tighter grip on what are we classed as the people, I guess, of that they're governing. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a super interesting topic.
Well, I just really quickly in response to that, I think James is absolutely right, and I think that's, not to lead up too much of the report coming this weekend, but that's exactly what we are talking about, and it takes it a step further of, let's use Discord, for example. I might trust this platform, Discord, but in reality, I'm giving my data to some third-party vendor that I probably have never heard of. And Discord's actually not the one collecting my data. It's, if I'm uploading a face scan, I have to do it on Persona or whatever, not to single out a third-party vendor, but Persona comes top of mind because it's been in the news since Discord's announcement. And with ZK proofs, it would enable you not to have to give data at all. Achieve the same result, completely the same result, without having to give any information. And you retain control over what is becoming one of the most valuable resources that we have, which is our own personal data.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. I just think there's ways around it. And I think that's what we should be pushing for is, the solution is to do this, but in a safe way.
Yeah. I mean, what we've been talking about I feel like forever is the idea that AI pours gasoline on the fire of inauthenticity. I went way down the rabbit hole during the Cambridge Analytica days and kind of concluded, Facebook is going to get shut down. Well, obviously they didn't. And people cared more about sharing pictures of their kids, which is fine. But now in an AI world where you can literally replicate humans saying things in a very, kind of seemingly authentic way, we're in a different world. And it's hard to keep up. And I feel like we need, like, game platforms, social media platforms need to get ahead of it now and get it set up correctly from the out of the gate. So Mike, let's go to AI. Speaking of a lot happening.
Yeah. Let's start just on that point with probably not making news across everything in AI, but I actually think important in the gaming world and in terms of tools that are being developed is that Netflix released its first AI tool this past week, and it did it in an open source way. The tool is called Void, and that stands for, I gotta read it, sorry, Video Object and Interaction Deletion. And basically what it is it's an editing tool that allows you to take footage, and then if you didn't like something that happened, remove an object, a person, an action, whatever, and have it in an automated way fill in the gap, as it were. Now, this is importantly, and the word deletion is in Void, right? It's a deletion tool, but as we were talking about earlier this week, if you can delete, if you're showing the ability to delete, you can probably also insert, as you would imagine. And so I think that's probably also coming relatively soon. But this is very important as Netflix, in my mind at least, as Netflix carves out this path where it's going to save a lot of money, right? Because if you think about it, like that take, again, this is in the world of live production, that take was good enough and we'll fix it offline. So instead of doing 8 takes of an expensive action sequence, let's say, you can do 1, maybe 2, right? That's a big savings to begin with. But then moreover, it is also walking the line between the thing that Netflix is releasing is not, I can't remember the name of the AI actress, but whatever, to great controversy in Hollywood. This is sort of like the milquetoast version.
Tilly something, right?
Yeah, Tilly Norwood. That's it.
Tilly Norwood.
Sounds like a porn name. This is not that controversial in Hollywood, but it's actually a big tool. And the fact that Netflix has some pretty strong VLM capabilities are really important. Elsewhere, and I think, much more fanfare and importance, the last week or so, and frankly, the last week, the last month, the last quarter have really been about Anthropic's momentum and dominance and Claude's uptake and everything else. And there's a couple of fronts here I just want to touch on. One, we got Anthropic's quarterly financials obviously last week following the end of March. And their momentum is, and I this is going to sound hyperbolic, but I mean it with the emphasis I'm about to say. I'm pretty old. In my long career, I have never seen acceleration like this at this kind of scale. Never, ever. And I was there for the 98, 99 original tech boom, right? Anthropic ended December with 9 billion in ARR. That was their momentum ending December. It ended March with 30 billion in ARR.
Wow.
So you are talking about more than 300% growth, again, in the tens of billions in one quarter, right? What's going on here? Well, remember, it feels like a long time ago for those who use this stuff, but it's not that long ago. It was the holidays that everyone was talking about being Claude pilled and vibe coding, while the family was, as we'll talk about, was, playing games on Netflix in the living room, right? This is, the widespread acceptance of this and the enterprise uptake and uplift in the first quarter has just been massive, right? And as a reflection of that, and that it's actually back end loaded, right? So a lot of this growth is coming now, not in January. They exited, or at some point in February, I don't know if they exited February with 500 enterprise customers that were spending $1 million or more. And today that number is over 1,000. Okay. So they have doubled their, very large token spend customers. It's really remarkable. And as an illustration of that, maybe I'll just pass it to Keshav for a second. People are realizing, in contrast to OpenAI, right, that Anthropic has not had this massive capex where they're like long more compute than they know what to do with. And so they've really been throttling their customers, and it's expensive. We are constantly talking about like, all right, I'll pay for my upgrade today, even at the $200 level for some people, but at the $20 level, it's like every day you're paying for your upgrade. And some folks found a workaround. Keshav, you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, like on the flip side, right? I didn't think I would have seen a headline like this, which talks about AI and cavemen in the same headline. But there's this Reddit post that went viral where one of these developers said he's making Claude talk like a caveman to cut costs, and apparently it works. According to his, he's posted how many tokens it costs to go through a normal dev procedure that they do on Claude. So it's a simple mechanic according to him. Instead of letting Claude warm up with pleasantries, narrate every step it takes, and close with an offer to help further, the developer constrained the model to short, stripped down sentences. So just tool first, result first, no explanation, which I guess works for a developer, right? He knows what he wants and he's getting that out exactly. So a normal web search task, according to him, would run on about 180 output tokens, and he dropped that down to roughly 45, given that he was making Claude talk like a caveman. The original post does claim that he's reduced his token usage by 75%, but he does provide a range that could be somewhere between 25 to 75%. And then you see comments under that from people saying, "Why waste time? Say lot word when few word do trick." I think it's a reference to The Office. And this is, I feel like, obviously this isn't something that's going to affect revenues for Anthropic down the line, but this is, I feel this is a different kind of innovation on the side where people who really need and are running into their token limit every day, maybe this works for them, and this is just a different side step to figure out how to not spend as much. Given, I feel like the Anthropic product or the Claude out there, the tokens are the most expensive compared to the rest. So this definitely was an interesting headline to pop out, and there's a lot of conversation happening on Reddit on this specific topic.
Yeah. I was thinking about this with Miles last week, saying that, people are like, the spending is getting a little bit out of control for people. Are you going to try the Caveman, Miles?
Yeah, I mean, we just convinced Creatorify to do enterprise plan. So I'm very excited. But
Awesome.
it's not gated by usage, so I'm actually also very terrified, like what that first bill is going to look like. It's like I feel like there's something to be said about like I know to calm down when Claude's like you're out of wait till 5 p.m. and I'm like okay, I'll wait till 5 p.m. So I'm a little nervous about what happens when I'm like unchained, but we'll see.
So I think this is a really important point. I mean, we're kind of tackling it anecdotally, but this is a really important point in the sort of arc of usage here, because it really is where we're delivering ROI, right? Miles describes himself as being miserly, but he's willing to pay for
100%.
usage, right? Because it's valuable. And in their business model, they have figured out how to create scarcity that they can price, right? Rather than, it's embedded in so many places that sort of to catch this point, like you might have 4 different models that you use, but like Claude's kind of the best. And I use it in Excel and I use CoWork if you're not a coder, if you're not in, using Claude Code. Like it's embedded in enough places that you're just like, all right, whatever, I'll spend the extra $10 because I need to finish this today. Right. That is incredibly important behavior. And it's really a brilliant approach to capturing marginal pricing. Now, it's probably still uneconomic for them, but you're creating the behavioral mechanism where you're like, fine, I'll pay for the incremental use. That's fine. And that's more than anyone else, literally anyone else is doing. It's worth mentioning that Google, because they're vertically integrated, is taking exactly the opposite approach. And they're trying to get people to use Gemini because its video capabilities are better and it's free. The campaign, the Google Gemini campaign that was running during the NCAA tournament was literally showing on a phone screen the Gemini app next to it is actually ChatGPT, not Claude, but next to that, and saying implicitly like, hey, we don't cost anything and you can upload as many images and whatever as you want. And so they're taking the approach of like, well, these guys have mispriced compute and it's free to us. So we're starting to see that differentiation, which is a really important moment in the development cycle, I think, overall.
I would flag too, Mike, like it's, you noted, the momentum of their growth in one quarter, from a corporate standpoint is wild. What I'm noticing with AI as well, and the people around me who are using it and the people I'm talking to, the behavior change from people who start engaging with AI is also, the momentum is crazy. I've watched in one quarter, like one of my coworkers, like now it's like they started working with it in January and now it's like they've transformed every workflow that they've done and they rely on Claude and they think completely differently about every task. Like I've noticed that at the working level, I've noticed that at the personal level. Like my wiring in my brain has changed to include Claude in a lot of my problem solving, which is, I think, like we always talk about behavior change, right, on the show. And I think that's my favorite thing to talk about. And I think from people engaging with AI, like I've never seen change happen faster. And I've never seen people get it faster. Like you have to do one project using any AI system and then you're like, I can, and it's like that, it's this amazing like bubble up effect. So it's really
that's
impressive.
a great behavioral observation at the organizational and by extension macroeconomic level. I'll just give a no-name anecdote, but a very good friend of mine recently got hired by a very large, asset manager, financial organization, that household name everybody would know of, not a hedge fund. Okay, to run part of their AI empowerment, if you want to think about it that way,
like
infrastructure for discretionary managers and whatever. It's a big job. Okay, and they basically told him that he could name your number of people to build out his organization, and his answer was, I don't want to hire anyone. I just want an unlimited token budget.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And is not, and just to be clear for everyone, that is not like, whatever, $100,000 employee here and a $50,000 employee here. That was a budget in the millions or tens of millions to hire people that he'd rather spend on tokens.
Yeah, it's
that
amazing.
tells you a lot.
It tells you a lot. And it also, you referenced the number of enterprise clients. Did you say it went from 500 to 1,000?
To 1,000 in a month.
Yeah.
In a month. And that doesn't even count. I mean, Miles, mentioned CreatorFi. CreatorFi is a startup, there are just, there are a lot of other companies that have jumped onto the bandwagon. I'd say in the last 3 months, it would probably be astounding to see the number of companies.
Yeah, I mean, just there, like 1,000 is the number of companies spending more than $1 million on tokens.
Right.
And I actually
CreatorFi's not going to spend $1 million on tokens.
Yeah, and I want to flag too, because I remember we had this conversation months ago about their like Claude and Anthropic's marketing push and how they're positioning themselves differently, how they're positioning themselves for the individual. And the conversation was, how is that going to win business, right? If you're appealing to the artist, which is what they're appealing to the individual creative, how are you going to, be human? It was kind of like their spiel. I can tell you, we switched from Gemini, which was like what we kind of like had already. We were like, oh, we're on Google Suite, we'll use Gemini. We switched because 2 of us were using Claude for personal reasons, like because we just have been using it because we're like, we like Claude, like, and we convinced, like, we just, our workflows were built around it, and it was like the whole rest of the company was like, okay, we should just switch to Claude because that's what most people are using. So again, like, that investment pays off. You get it into the individual level, you convince the individuals, and I know in this case it literally has translated to an enterprise plan.
Yeah, and it's just like, there's a big ethical consideration here. So if you can tap into the hearts and minds of people who believe you are the ethical solution, relatively speaking, I mean, it's incredibly powerful.
I do want to touch on one other thing, which is pretty important for Anthropic, which is that they released on Tuesday the Mythos model, not for wide usage, but for testing. There's a number of things going on here. The most important of which is there's a lot of, I'll call them recursive capabilities here, meaning that this model is training itself and building itself, which has a lot of the sort of AGI related and safety implications, but where a lot of the attention is here is in cybersecurity and in the hacker community. And the reason for that is that they opted not to release Mythos widely, but instead to sort of, I'll say mini release it or whatever, as what they're calling Project Glasswing for cyber testing. So they're putting it into the hands of cybersecurity companies like Cloudflare and Palo Alto and companies like that. And ironically, because they're locked in litigation in the Defense Department or the Department of War, they also released it to the government for testing because they're appropriately nervous about the capabilities to hack a whole bunch of different systems in an automated way. And this is, they're basically backfilling some of the capabilities. And instead of it being like, we're capable of this, so we're going to build our own cybersecurity product and then sell you the, insurance against our, as it were, against our hack. They're really taking a sort of whole of enterprise, whole of government, every stakeholder approach to this. But it deserves a lot of attention because we are now at a point where, particularly in Google's approach here has been, bringing in quantum capabilities as well. But we're really getting to a point now where like anything is hackable. And if you put that ability into the hands of a layman or somebody who doesn't even know how to code, I'm not trying to be very arm wavy here, despite that I do wave my arms when I talk. But this is a pretty big moment, and Anthropic is trying to be as responsible as possible about it. Back to your point, Angie, that the part of the branding here is that we're the ethical, responsible company, but they're also the company that is at the very cutting edge of customer-facing recursive models.
Yeah. Which is huge potential in either direction, positive or negative. So you alluded, Mike, to the Netflix game controller earlier. We talk a lot about behavior change. Merge onto the highway of behavior that is already happening is our number one investment mantra. Miles, we talked about this earlier in the week. Talk to us about the Netflix game controller and kind of what behavior shift we saw. Will that stick? What do you think about it?
Yeah, basically, like in short, the the Netflix game controller is a standalone app on the App Store. It lets you control. Netflix rolled out, I think, last November, like a bunch of like party games that you can play on your TV at home, multiplayer party games. So there's like a Lego, almost like Mario Party equivalent game, and basically over last weekend, that game controller app like topped the App Store in the free apps. It surpassed like Claude and ChatGPT briefly. It's gone down again. But what's interesting, what should be flagged, is there was no big marketing push that led to that. There was no, from what we could see, there's no like ads they were running. There was nothing that was like, the new Netflix game controller. And so what this kind of article that we were reading was venturing a guess at was just, it was reflecting that people were kind of gathered over the holiday, right, together for a meal or whatever. And it naturally led to like an uptick in installs in family households. And like, I think that that's just really interesting from, again, behavior standpoint. Like, I think Mike would agree with me. I don't know if Netflix's future rests in gaming, but it does, give us some data on just like that initiative, right? If they're trying to corner this household casual gaming, market, it just shows some progress is being made without them even really intending, right? I mean, it's intentional, but if they're not running a huge marketing push and we're seeing that behavior take hold, I think that's pretty interesting. So I'm hoping to hear more about that and see more kind of come out of that. I think their number one issue right now is just like I still don't know, like, I don't think people know that that's something they could do on Netflix. I think there's no easy way to find it. I've looked for it before, and it's like, it takes some searching. You kind of have to like look up games in the search bar, and you're like, why am I looking up games when that's my behavior for how I find my Netflix show? It really needs like its own tab, which like I don't think it really has yet. So.
Interesting.
Or they should be advertised, like when you go on Amazon or anywhere else to buy a game, they should be advertising, did you know that you already have this game in your Netflix subscription?
Yeah.
Or like if they even really wanted to go far, like when you're clicking into the sign-in page, it should be almost like another thing that you can click into, which is like Game Portal.
Yeah.
Right. Like that immediately is like, I have to pay attention every time I'm at that stage because I have to click on my profile, not my brother's, So if you add another thing above it that says like gaming time, like that's immediately aware. That's immediate awareness. So if they, yeah.
To your point on the, where they're sort of diversifying their business model and whatever else. I mean, what I would just say is that from a form factor standpoint, where Netflix is going to have the most growth is not in the living room. It's in your hand it's not on TV screens. It's on mobile devices and iPads and, sort of out in the world. And to the extent that they can seed some adoption through gaming that might start in the living room, but end up like if you're downloading your game your iPhone as a controller for your TV, the next step is, I'll just play the game on my iPhone, or I'll play the mobile games on the iPhone, whatever. But they are, if you think about it as like how many, we always refer back to this as like the mantra that they're really competing with sleep, right? So how many more hours can you spend in the living room? Netflix is already dominating those hours. They're absolutely dominant. Where they can take share is what you're doing on the subway or what you're doing. Anyway, you get the idea. But that's part of the overall plan. Like the long-term plan here is about form factors, not just the trans content that we cross content we talk about.
Yep. So speaking of traditional media, did anybody see the new Super Mario Brothers movie? I planned to see it, but the only night my daughter was available to go with me was the same night as the UConn Michigan game, so I skipped it. But I'm definitely going to see it this weekend. It broke, Oh, let's do that. Okay, let's get a group.
Creator movie night. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Creator movie night. Let's do it. I love it. It broke all kinds of records. Not surprisingly, it was the biggest motion picture association global opening weekend of 2026. It is the only animated franchise to have two titles open over $350 million globally. Interestingly, it was the second highest global opening for a video game, a film based on a video game, and it was number 2 behind the Super Mario Brothers movie. So yeah, I'm excited to see that. Okay, Grace, that's a really good idea. Okay, so come reach out to us if you're going to the World Builder Summit. We'll go to the Mario movie together. We'll all be wearing our bracelets. And yeah, everybody have a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend. And we'll see you next week. And I forgot to mention the disclaimer. This is not any advice to buy, sell, or hold any security. These are personal opinions. We are not, making recommendations, even though we may or may not hold the companies mentioned as investments. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great week and weekend. And we'll see you next week. Thank you, Grace, for joining.